Alrighty, we are on to requirement 7 of the coin collecting merit badge. And unfortunately, I can only really give a lot of advice on this one. The first bit of advice that I would give is there is the letter of the merit badge, which says if you do one of the following, then you completed the requirement. Some of these are easier to do than others, especially based on where you live. There are 4 options, and in the 4th option, it gives you 4 options to do, and then report to your counselor about what you experienced. So it's kind of like there's 7 different things you can do for this requirement. The first 3 options do have at a bare minimum, a financial, cost to it. Option 1 is collect and identify for your counselor 20 different world coins from at least 7 different countries. Identify the country, major design elements, and denomination of each. So at a bare minimum, you can find foreign coins in your current change, and you're going to pay the face value. A lot of people don't look very closely between a Canadian nickel and an American nickel, and it has happened to me probably dozens of times where I get change and I'm kind of going through it. Canada's dime, nickel, quarter, and sometimes they're penny, but they discontinue the penny, are the same size and for the most part the same thickness of our coins. So you can find them that way. The simplest option is going to a coin shop and you can buy foreign coins by the pound. If it's something that you're really into, the prices can vary anywhere between a couple of dollars a pound to $10 to $20 a pound. The shop owner, they are going to be able to identify silver coins or coins with a lower mintage. Sometimes they don't, go through it as strenuously as others. I got a Mexican nickel before that was made out of silver. It didn't really look like it was made out of silver, and that's because it had about a 30% silver percentage to it. But it is going to be somewhat difficult to get at least 7 different countries. Here in the US, Mexican coins and Canadian coins are much easier to come by, but getting, much more wild than that is difficult just because of distance. We don't end up with a lot of it that way. And it kind of goes into the same category as the next option is basically the same thing, except it is paper money. I would say with a lot of the paper money, it can be very, very inexpensive. I was looking at some paper money that I have from Nepal, and it was $1,000 bill. Well, at the time that I looked it up, I think this was 4 or 5 days ago, that 1,000 note bill translated to 12 cents US dollars. So going to coin shops, they almost hand it out for free. I know a guy that picks up foreign currency a lot, and he'll go in with $5 and basically ask his local coin shop, I'll take all the paper money you have. And he has, come home with stacks upon stacks of this stuff because, it's just not that collectible in the coin world. You can get a lot of it for relatively inexpensive. Another friend of mine, he's gone to Japan several times, and he's given me yen coins, because the Japanese yen is, it very, very few countries have a 1-to-1 for the US. Matter of fact, like I can sit here and look up, the euro to US dollar. 1 euro equals $1.16 American. The British pound, it's actually kind of lower right now, 87 cents. But like I was talking about the yen, 184. And it has just been steadily climbing since last year. It was 161. So I remember him giving me that's euro, 159. So a lot of this foreign coinage and bill money can be got for relatively cheap, but I do completely understand. I go to a coin shop about once a month because the closest one to me that I think that has reasonable pricing is a 50-minute drive. I can get better deals in a bigger city. I live in Northeast Texas. Dallas is a 2.5-hour drive. Houston's a 3-hour drive. Austin's a 3.5-hour drive. So depending on where you live, you could have a coin shop 10 minutes down the road. You could have a coin shop several hours away. It doesn't tell you how to collect this stuff. You could go to a coin shop and get 20 different coins in one go. You could make it more challenging by trying to, find it out in the wild. But option 3, which I think is the most difficult, and it also kind of comes down to preference, is collecting 20 different tokens and or metals and identify the issuer and use of each. So tokens are a lot more interesting. Simply put, I remember using tokens at Chuck E. Cheese or Austin Park and Pizza. Car washes gave out tokens. We've got a couple of Disney World tokens. Not during my time period, but when my grandparents went, they held on to a couple of their tokens. And the metals, that could go, loads of different ways. It could be metals that you've earned. I have my great-grandfather's, service medals from World War II. Me personally, those are the only medals that I really care for, is, family heirloom type medals. But, that's the beauty of this merit badge, is you get to pick and choose. They say at least 7 different countries and, 20 different, coins or paper money. Nothing is stopping you from collecting more. This is just introducing you to the hobby. And you might find that I only care about European coinage. Canada, if I'm comparing the American silver dollar and the Canadian silver dollar, Canada's silver dollar has ours beat, in my opinion, 99% of the time. Except when the US does like commemorative stuff, like when they brought the Morgan dollar back. Those were very, very sought after. I really enjoy Australia's silver coinage because they put their animals on the back of it. Like I have a 2005 Canadian silver dollar that's got a kangaroo on it. And as much as I like the bald eagle, that's one of my favorite coins. And then the last one, it's almost more about time. And, some of it comes down to location. So complete one of the following and report to your counselor what you experience. Attend a coin show. Even if you show up to a coin show with zero money to buy anything there, it's like walking through a museum. You know, I I've gone to coin shows, gun shows, farmers markets, these places where all of these different people set up their booths. And it's like going to a museum. 99% of them let you look at their product, ask all the questions you want, inspect it. The farmers markets are more inclined to, let you sample stuff. But I've gone to coin shows where, especially when I was younger, they would hand out wheat pennies or buffalo nickels or stuff like that to the younger kids to try to get them, more interested in it. Some of these people have items that are hundreds of years old. Some of these people have items that are, almost everyone has like a centerpiece, or they have like they bring something that is just so overly valued that 99.9% of the customers are not going to buy. I remember going to a coin show one time, and a guy had like $100,000 gold coin there. He'd been doing coin shows for decades, and he said his last big ticket item was like a $25,000 coin, and it took like 9 years before someone was like, "That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to pay whatever price you tell me." And it's just one of those things. You could spend $1 at a coin show, or you can spend tens of thousands. But it's like going to a museum. You might find stuff that you're interested in. Me personally, my most favorite coin is the wheat penny. And, every chance that I get, funds allowing, I buy as many of them as I can get. You can attend a coin club meeting. Again, this depends on where you're at. I live in a very tiny town. We don't have a coin club. When I lived in Corpus Christi during college, that's a city of, several 100,000 people, there was a coin club there. So this one is kind of dictated on your distance to a major city, or if enough people are interested in it in your small community to start this thing. You can tour a U.S. Mint facility. Again, where I live in Texas, the Denver Mint is a couple day drive away. The San Francisco Mint is a 3-day drive away. The Philadelphia, several hours away. I could visit the in Fort Worth where they print the money. That's several hours away. That's a whole day trip. So depending on your your distance to these locations, I highly recommend option 3, and that's touring. Put it on a bucket list. When you're planning family vacation time and stuff, make that an itinerary thing. But option 4 is easier. And I totally get it if you had to pick between 3 and 4. Plenty of reasons to pick 4. And that is do a virtual exhibit. So lots and lots of museums really started pushing these during and after COVID. I can't begin to name the entire list of museums that have done virtual tours of their places. It lets more people experience that kind of stuff. It removes a very large financial barrier, depending on the distance that you have to go for stuff like this. Like, I don't know anything about scouting in Alaska, but, touring a mint facility, that's a several $1,000 trip, having to fly into, the lower 48 or Hawaii, or if you are doing scouts on like a foreign military base or something like that. It does say, make sure you have parent or guardian's permission first, and it's approved by your counselor. You know, if you live 45 minutes away from the Denver Mint, I could kind of see where your counselor would say, tour the Mint before you did a virtual tour. You know, you need to be prepared to give reasons why you would pick 4 instead of 3. Or why you would pick 4 instead of 2, or 3 instead of 1. Or, you know, you stick with, you know, requirement 7, A, B, or C. That is completely up to you. You know, this is one of the great things about the different merit badges is you don't have to complete 100% of everything when they sit there and they give you options. I would highly recommend, as someone that likes to collect coins, you try out everything on here. You know, there's nothing saying after you've completed the merit badge you can't. You know, if you collect the world coins, you complete your merit badge. Then you decide you want to do paper money. You know, the only thing stopping you is your own, you know, financial goals. It's a relatively inexpensive hobby that turns into a very, very expensive hobby. But again, you pay the amount that you are comfortable with for doing this. I would even take it a stretch, you know, as far as to say you collect the 20 world coins and, you know, you complete this requirement. It's not part of this merit badge, but, you know, other merit badges talk about, you know, businesses and, you know, I think of personal management, you know, when you're planning a budget. Lots of people buy and sell coins every single day. You could make it a goal that I spent $10 on my coins. I'm going to try to resell them for 15. You know, best worst case scenario is you spent 10, you sell them for 10. So this is the last requirement. If there are any questions, that's what the comment section's for. I would reference the merit badge book as well. If you've got it, Google is a wonderful place to ask these questions. Going to NGC or PCGS, those are coin grading companies. You know, they show you a lot of the varieties and values of coins. There are good books to get. Most people call it the red book or the blue book. The only issue with that is they release them every single year. And so the price points in the books might not actively reflect the current valuation of some of these coins. But they're going to show tons of pictures, you know, show you what to look for in errors and anything else like that in the coin world. One of the tools that I've started using a lot recently is my phone. You know, the zoom on my phone, you know, I set it up on a tripod and just kind of point it down, and I can set the coins underneath and I can zoom in. You know, my phone does up to a 10x zoom. You know, there's an endless possibility with this. And I hope after doing this merit badge, you continue to want to collect coins long after, you know, you're aged out of scouts and, you know, moving on with your life and doing all this other stuff, because it is a fun hobby. And that's why I picked this merit badge to discuss and go over with y'all. So one more time, if you got questions, leave them in the comment section down below. I will answer everything that I can, or hopefully other people watching this video will also answer your questions as well. And, you know, get the requirements done and earn this merit badge. But I'll see y'all later.